Welcome back, everyone. I am your consumer investigator, Dale Cardwell. Spending time on your deck is a wonderful way to enjoy the outdoor season. Bryan Miller with Outback Decks tells us about some common signs that point to potential problems. Take a look.
So a deck is really like a three-legged stool. It has an attachment point at the ground. It has an attachment point up here at the band at the top of the post. And then it has an attachment point at the home, right? So those are the three legs of the stool of a deck. So the most important thing to understand about a three-legged stool is if you kick one of the legs out, then it tends to fall over or want to fall over, right? It's hard to balance. So we want to look down here at the bottom of a post, and we want to be sure that this post is connected physically to a footer. And a footer is typically concrete in the ground that has a certain depth to it and a certain width to it. And there are some requirements through the International Code that dictate what the depth of a footer is going to be. So what you can see here is this is a concrete slab, and the post was just attached to a slab. What we know here in Georgia is that most slabs are at a maximum probably 4 inches deep. And what you can actually see, if you come right here, you can see that there's actually a physical hole or a gap here. And if I dig down into the physical hole and the gap and I pull out some of the debris, and if you can do a close-up right here, you can actually see the dirt and the mud down in the hole. So, you know, my finger's not that long, so this slab is only about 2.5 inches deep. A slab at 2.5 inches deep doesn't give you the kind of structural support that you need for the weight and the load of the deck, right? So the footing is supposed to be a minimum of 12 inches deep. Here we know it's only 2.5 inches deep. So even though we have this guy here called a post-based connector, he's structural. This post is physically attached to this connector here, and it keeps it up off the ground so air can flow through there. That allows us not to have problems with rotting at the base of the post. You can see a lot of the green algae building up here, so you know a lot of moisture sitting here. It needs to be structurally attached to a proper footing. Since this pad is only 2 inches deep, that would not pass an inspection. So it's not really a structural connection if it's just bolted to a 4-inch slab of concrete. We need that to be structural. Number 2 is a post attachment up here physically to the top of this band. So you can see that we've got a band that runs across the outer portion of the deck. It wraps around the outside of the deck. And the post needs to be physically attached to it. So what you can see here by close-up is what they did is they drove nails from the top of the post at an angle up into the beam. And they did it on all the sides here. That type of an attachment, when you put nails on an angle like this, they're going up into the lumber. So if weight is pushing down on a nail that's like this, it can back its way out, right? What we want to see is a physical connection there with what we call a top cap connector or some kind of a mechanical fastener that's similar to what you would see on the base connector. It physically attaches to the post, wraps the post, and then physically attaches to the beam. And when it's physically attached with nails, the nails go through the holes in the connector. Nails are actually made for shear. They go through so that weight forced down on them or lift forced up to it won't allow that physical attachment to be broken. Right? So here we are up on top of the deck. This deck is 7 or 8 years old, hasn't really been maintained. In other words, there's not really been any cleaning, any coating, any protection. And when we're dealing with southern yellow pine, pressure treated, or any kind of wood material on the surface of a deck, we're always going to begin to see this green algae build up. And you can actually look at the deck surface, and even though we're wet today, you can see it's really slick, right? So it's almost like skating on ice, right? That can be very dangerous, slipping hazard, and it can cause tragedy, particularly at the top of the stairs. What I really want to talk to you is about the post connection. So you can physically see right here on this side that just like we talked about downstairs, they've notched the post over the deck. So I want you to pay close attention to what happens when we do that, right? There's a lot of flexibility on this post, right? And I'm gonna have Bryan lean there and I'm gonna lean here, and we're just gonna put a little bit of pressure, right? So Bryan's gonna pull and I'm gonna push, and I'll go the other way. And you can actually see the railing is torquing, right? A rail system shouldn't be able to do that. The guardrail post needs to be able to withstand a certain amount of pressure applied to it so that it's not hazardous and it won't fall. When you notch a 4x4, you've created a non-structural entity, and that whole structure of the rail system wants to move. Posts are required. They're required at certain distances, but no matter how many you put together, if you cut them and notch them and they're 4x4s, they become non-structural and they won't function. Hey, I'm Bryan Miller with Outback Deck, and that's your safety tip for today.